quickly, but I think he's
all right. Hold on a
to
second. John Kerry, the Secretary of State, now about to speak himself.
Buonasera a tutti, è un vero piacere tornare a Roma. Good evening, everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to be back in Rome. I'm especially pleased to be here in Rome at a time when Italy is making a transition with a new government and making progress, important progress on growing its economy and tackling unemployment. Tonight I will have the pleasure of meeting with Italy's new Foreign Minister, Mogherini, and I'm hopeful. We were supposed to also be joined by the Prime Minister, but he's on his way back from Brussels, maybe a little bit delayed. We hope he can make it. I want to assure our Italian friends that the United States intends to continue to deepen our economic and security partnership with this government, including our shared commitment to negotiating an ambitious transatlantic trade and partnership, investment partnership agreement. We believe that such an agreement would be enormously helpful to all of our economies, good for Europe, good for the United States. It will create jobs. It can help create wealth. And at this time, the global economy needs that kind of trade partnership. President Obama, as you know, will be here shortly at the end of March, and I look forward to joining him here at that time in order to talk about these valuable partnerships and many other issues. The reason that my counterparts and I came to Rome today was to demonstrate our commitment all together, a huge number of countries that came together to demonstrate our commitment to Libya's democratic transition. And we recognize that this is really a pivotal moment for Libya as it drafts a post-revolution constitution and moves towards national reconciliation and elections. I can tell you that we in America, who are still perfecting our democracy and working and struggling to make it work as effectively as possible, and it goes up and down, as we all know. We very well know from our own history the difficulties we had centuries ago in developing our Constitution and giving it full bloom, that this is hard work. It doesn't happen overnight, and it is something that takes devotion and commitment and courage. I think today we heard from the Prime Minister and the President of Libya their dedication to helping to make this transition work. We also know that Libyans did not risk their lives in the 2011 revolution just to slip backward into thuggery and violence. And as I told President Abu Samain today, as well as Prime Minister Zaidan, we have no illusions about the challenges ahead, but we are committed to work very, very closely with the government of Libya, but also with our partners. And Italy is one of the central partners in the effort to help Libya in this transition, together with France, Great Britain, Germany, and others. And we will continue to work closely to fight terrorism, to prevent the spread of conventional weapons and to secure those weapons where they should be secured, and to build democratic institutions. Now let me say a word about a subject that I know is on everybody's mind, and that's the question of Ukraine. Just a few moments ago, President Obama spoke in Washington and laid out the steps that he has ordered with respect to this situation at this time, which are in keeping with precisely what we said last week we would do as a consequence of the steps that Russia decided to take with respect to Crimea. As you have heard me say all week, the choices that Russia has made escalated this situation, and we believe that Russia has the opportunity now, together with the rest of us, but Russia particularly has the opportunity now to make the right choices in order to de-escalate. The United States also has choices to make, and President Obama has been clear that we cannot allow Russia or any country to defy international law with impunity. There's no place in the community of nations for the kind of aggression and steps that we have seen taken in Crimea and Ukraine in these last days. So today, as we announced we would last week, we have taken specific steps, and the State Department also has taken specific steps in response to what has occurred. Starting today, at President Obama's direction, the State Department is putting in place tough visa restrictions on a number of officials and other individuals. And the United States will not grant visas to those who threaten the sovereignty or territorial integrity of Ukraine, and if they already have one, it will be revoked in those individual cases. Now, let me remind you that this decision comes on top of our existing policy to deny visas to those who are involved in human rights abuses or political oppression in Ukraine. And it is also on top of other steps that the United States has already taken, which we have announced. Now, at the same time, President Obama has issued an executive order that gives the Treasury Department the legal framework to sanction those who threaten Ukraine's sovereignty, security, and democracy. Those who contribute to the misappropriation of Ukraine's state assets, and, just as importantly, those who try to assert government authority over any part of Ukraine without authorization from the legitimate government in Kiev. I want to emphasize, and there's a reason why only the legal framework was put in place and not the specific designations. And that reason is that even as we will keep faith with what we have said we would do, we want to be able to have the dialogue that leads to the de-escalation. We want to be able to continue the intense discussions with both sides in order to try to normalize and end this crisis. And we will absolutely consider, if we have to, additional steps beyond what we've done, but our preference, and the President has said this and I have said this, is to emphasize the possibilities for the dialogue that can lead to the normalization and defusing of this crisis. Now, yesterday in Paris, we had lengthy discussions, and we met also, obviously, with our Ukrainian counterpart, the Foreign Minister of Ukraine, and discussed with him Ukrainian thoughts about what should form the centerpiece of our approach to this effort to negotiate. And with the Ukrainian view in mind, and with the input of all of our allies in the European community, we have made suggestions to Foreign Minister Lavrov, which he is currently taking personally to President Putin in Sochi, I believe. And we have agreed to stay in close touch in order to see if there is a way forward, try to get to the negotiating table with the parties necessary to be able to stabilize this. We've been in very close touch all day with our European counterparts, both those who were here in Rome as well as by telephone for those who were in Brussels. And we agreed that over the course of the next hours, next days, there is an imperative to try to move quickly in order to prevent mistake or misinterpretation or any other measures that might preclude our opportunity to be able to find the political solution that we believe is the best way to proceed. The Ukrainian people, we are convinced, beyond any doubt whatsoever, want nothing more than the right to determine their own future. And they want to be able to live freely in a safe and prosperous country where they can make the choices that people make in other countries around the world. And they have the international community's full support. And while we reserve the right to take steps beyond those things that were announced today, we want President Putin and Russia and everyone to understand our preference is to get back to a normality and get back to a place where the rights of the people of Ukraine will be respected and the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the nation will be respected. The United States will continue to stand with the Ukrainian people, as will our allies and friends in the European community and elsewhere, in order to stand up for the values that we all believe in our fellow, that define our fellow democracies. So thank you very, very much, and I look forward to the opportunity to take a couple questions.
Great, thank you. The first question is from Elise Labott of CNN.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. You said that the Ukrainian people have the right to determine their own future. Does that include the people of Crimea? Don't they have the right to determine their own future? Are there any conditions under which the U.S. might accept a referendum as part of the solution? And then on your meeting with Foreign Minister Lavrov, Minister Fabius said that he's forming this contact group and that the Russians might agree. Did you talk about this with the minister, and do you see this as a useful mechanism that might happen in the coming days? And lastly, I'm wondering if you talked to him about the fact that he told you last week that the exercises that the Russians were doing had nothing to do with Ukraine. We now know that that was a pretext to mask the Russian intervention.
What was the first part of that question? I'm sorry.
Well, we understand.
We now know what?
Well, we know that the exercise did have a lot to do with Ukraine, and perhaps it was a pretext for Russia to go into the Crimea. I'm just wondering, you've invested a lot in your relationship with Minister Lavrov, and I'm wondering if you feel misled by him at all, and whether you spoke with him about that. Thank you.
Well, let me take the first part of that question. Crimea is part of Ukraine. Crimea is Ukraine. And we support the territorial integrity of Ukraine, and the government of Ukraine needs to be involved in any kind of decision with respect to any part of Ukraine. Any referendum on Ukraine is going to have to be absolutely consistent with Ukrainian law. And it's my understanding that the Constitution of Ukraine requires an all-Ukraine referendum. In other words, every part of Ukraine, all Ukrainians would have to be part of a referendum with respect to the territory of Ukraine. So therefore, the proposed referendum would violate the Constitution of Ukraine and international law and the sovereignty of Ukraine itself. If it adheres to the Constitution of Ukraine, it's up to Ukrainians to define that. It's not up to the United States or Russia to make that decision. Ukrainians need to live by Ukrainian law and according to the Constitution. And their Constitution would require precisely what I just said. So that is, I think, critical to anything that would flow. Secondly, with respect to a contact group and where we're proceeding, frankly, I think everybody has been working to put a contact group together. I think it's been a general assumption of all of us in unity that we would like to see if a contact group can be put together. And I think that the key here is whether or not that is going to be something that will work in the context of Russia's willingness to do this, and obviously Ukrainian views about this. Thus far, the Ukrainian government has expressed their desire to have the support of a contact group, providing, of course, that the government, that Russia is dealing with them in that context. This can't be in lieu of the respect for the existing government of Ukraine. And we don't intend for it to be, and none of us who have been part of the discussions about a contact group view this as anything except supportive of the process. But I believe there is a way to structure this, and that is obviously part of what we are now engaged in discussions with Russia through Foreign Minister Lavrov and to Mr. Putin.